So, I found this science issue with Gary revealing, and beyond Gary, what is Gary in this whole thing? Is Gary's like I think a chimera is the word, where everybody could see what they want. Like the Bible, he's on every side of every subject, and he would say, "No, here's an issue. Look, I'm clearly on one side. You bring the ball. I can't get that. Oh, well, if you leave it over there, the fuck, ball drop." Um, he'll say, "Look how strong I am in this one issue," but it's like, no, but there's more than one issue in these subjects, and so it's like, I'm for the feminism, and women have it hard, and they need a chance, and obviously they don't get a chance, but on the other hand, I'd kill a bitch if she tried to have a baby. I don't just claim the right to abort, but I kill a woman trying to have my baby. I don't want, it was a contract. And so he's on every side like that. And so, for example, I never thought my agreements with him on feminism were more than superficial. But, um, for example, he's into IRV. Not many people saw IRV, especially back then. Now we have a version of that, ranked choice voting, same thing, in Maine, and we're the first state. So I think it's going slowly somewhere. But, like, could we work together? Well, we also agreed on the idea that there should be philosophical representation, not just primarily geographic representation. Could we agree? No, because he thinks everything should be geographical, and I'm like, well, let's start just with the Senate. That's not close enough to a compromise for him. You have to agree exactly with him, and of course, nobody agrees exactly with him. Everybody sees some of these overlaps, right? Some people's overlaps might be like, I'm for women's rights, but I'd kill a bitch if, and the science stuff has really shown me, here, bring me the ball. I can't get that. I can't get that. I can't get that over there. I can't get it. Come on, bring it over here. Come on. Bring me the ball. Bring me the ball. Oh, good girl. Good girl. Bring the ball. There it goes. Oh, you got it. No, I'm not getting it over there. I know you like that place when I'm making a video. It doesn't matter how cute you look. So science has been the ultimate thing here. He totally misrepresents what people are claiming. He goes on and on about LIGO in a recent video. Not that I could keep up with a couple hours a day, but with the LIGO experiment and, how it's tuned to the wrong thing. It should be made to find earthquakes. And, it's like our seismographs aren't good enough, the ones we do use for earthquakes. We need LIGO. And then just the way he describes everything, and he assumes all these particles and things, and it's like, and he misrepresents, and and also just historically, one of the things, if you're interested in science, you need to do is familiar yourself with the history of science, because it's not a history of how these people thought right and learned the right thing. No, it's a history of a million wrong ideas that got knocked down. The hopefuls had great hopes. And sometimes it's really important, things like finding an absolute frame of reference for the universe. That was hoped for and assumed by people even. It was very disappointing for them. That dream got dashed for a reason, and people that had held and pursued that dream when it hadn't been dashed, it's worth finding out how they got convinced otherwise. And the frame of reference thing is like, it's not a coordinate system, it's the graph paper. There's no designation on that, where the origin is, but it's this graph paper. And the fact is that everybody has their own graph paper, but if you're going in the same velocity and direction as somebody, you don't have to be in the same position, but going in the same vector, then you could be said to share. But really, you're not sharing your inertial reference frame. It's just that your two inertial reference frames are totally equivalent, mappable back and forth. All the masses, everything is the same. So it's an idea you could disagree with, but there's reasons people believe it. And to misrepresent, and when these, it's like, why would two black holes not run right into each other? Well, because they're going like this, and they're more likely to miss by some amount, and then their gravity. But the fact is, those black holes did collide. And they created such a mass and an explosion of energy that this can be seen as a disappearance of gravity, right? When a bunch of mass, the mass of, whatever it is, I think it was huge, thousands of times more than our whole solar system, something like that. Look it up, whatever it was. But an amazing amount of mass turned into energy all at once from this collision, that gravity disappears. And the fact that that would create a ripple in something that detects gravity, like a pendulum, is, it's totally commonsensical. It's just that it has to be super, super sensitive, and especially on Earth, that's difficult to do. Definitely at the edge of what you would try to do. Of course, science is always trying to push to the edge of what is possible to try to do. Trying to get governments to spend more and up that limit and various things, to be at the edge, because that's where they're learning the most new stuff. When Galileo made the first telescope, he could point it anywhere in the sky and make amazing discoveries. But Gary insults or berates Theoria for being so disrespectful to scientists, but he is. And then I call him on that, and he says he's not, while he insults them, while he says that it's a damn lie to say that he was anything other than respectful. And then he says, oh, it's just draft science. I'm just asking what ifs. He's not asking what ifs, he's asking what if I'm right? And if you say, well, if you're right, then you're right. He likes that. Somehow that would make him right. But if you go, well, you don't seem right. What if you're right? Then, well, that doesn't make any sense. And so I don't think you're right. Then fuck you, you're fucktard, da-da-da-da-da-da. You disagree. You could agree with 90% of what Gary says and go, well, I think they turn in the other direction. Not that 90 degrees, but the opposite 90 degrees. And you'd be a crazy fucktard. But this overlap exists where you could see in Gary somebody who seems like, he's intelligent. I could tell from these 3 or 4 things I happen to agree with, and he's figured them out, and he says kind of reasons that, make sense to me, and all of the 90 other things that he's scattershot on, it's easy to ignore those or think, oh, he'll figure that out or whatever. But the science thing really shows the pureness of his hypocrisy, about complaining that Theoria is, just a crazy, and all the people with alternate science theories, they're all crazy but him. And he thinks he's going to have, if he spent $10,000 debating, who's that guy, Neil deGrasse Tyson, that he would, he'd be paid back many-fold on that and could pay back the debt of borrowing the $10,000, and he's going to win, a Nobel Prize, and, my tombstone's, it's all going to be figured out in time for my tombstone to say Pierre was so wrong to doubt this master, and I'm the first one that ever thought of the particle kind of thing. No, you're not. And if it was a shadow, then the size of the thing would be more important than the density. No, the density would be darker. Okay. The math doesn't work out for those things. It's like, oh, the math doesn't matter. No, the math does matter to other people. The math doesn't matter to Gary. Fine. But it does matter to other people. It reminds me of this political thing. It bothers me when people on the left or the right or anybody, it's like the American people want this. The American people, this guy was elected, now the American people want this. If you can't even admit that 2 people exist, 3, 5, 6, 7 million, 100 million, with all different opinions, categorizing, even as you want to categorize opinions into at least 2 very distinct groups, and really many more than that. And you say, oh, people want this. It's like, that's prima facie obviously not true. People want multiple things. The solution is in admitting that people want multiple things. And when people go the way they're going now, that it's like, no, the solution lies in destroying the people that disagree with me. No, that isn't where the solution lies. And you could go, no, it would totally be in there. No, because your children don't agree with you. Those other ideas would simply come back. You're going to have to deal with them. But even if you could indoctrinate your children 100% of the time, it doesn't work out. Because you can't kill all of them, because they're fucking resourceful too. And they will fight to survive too. In the history of, the written history of humankind, having this battle and it working out that way and the other ideas never actually dying out, okay, then the next step is, well, but if we can beat off freedom for another 1,000 years, well, I'm not into that. I want to speed it up. right? And anyway, that's off topic because it was really, I think Gary can tell people what they're on the net for, because you can look at this guy and find out what it is about that interests you about conversation. For me, it's like I like anybody that's keeps going and going, keeps on ticking. I like anybody indomitable that you can say whatever you feel like, they never feel crushed. Now, it's unfortunately such people tend towards an insanity level of confidence and egotism, but that's one thing, right? And then also I like that people that raise a subject. I have many subjects that I like that nobody else even gets how it's a subject, and I like having those. But I recognize that it's good to have people that have a bunch of ideas that overlap, things other people go, oh yeah, I want to talk about that. I understand what that is as a subject, And Gary definitely has raised a lot of subjects. So he's a display, really, of also what's wrong with our conversation. Why we need a Gary in order to raise the conversation sometimes. Why we feel like some commonality or common basis just because of a few ideas that come through a fog, and they're bright enough, it doesn't matter that there's all these other lights shining out to every fucking different kind of person, whether you hate immigrants but aren't racist, or all of these things that contradict as they go through, right? And then ultimately, how much can you criticize a guy once you see that there's obviously a psychological, making money off of having one debate with Tyson, winning the Nobel Prize from a bunch of people that he also says have basically been lying to themselves or everybody or whatever, incredible dishonesty one way or another for centuries, but they're going to award him, they're going to see the wrongness of their way after all of these centuries because they just never heard a video from Gary. So where do you go with something like that? It's cruel to point that out over and over and over. It's pointless. It makes no difference, and yet it does make a difference because why? Well, look, a lot of conversationalists, we've all come to know Gary, from the Amazing Atheists and the, Hard Case to the, all through the philosophical people, the Thou Art That's. Such a huge spectrum of people have found something there that was like, well, oh, we can engage in that. And that in itself is rare. Now, this is not a quality that Gary would be proud of, right? Because he's wanting to be right. And we all think he's crazy from all these different angles. And rude and crazy, and counterproductive. And we look at him and we think, hey, we have reason to expect better, but obviously not. So there's something there that's very important about this situation. It's not the kind of significance that Gary wants, though, right? Right, if he was the Larry King of YouTube and he's just like, I like raising a conversation, then he could sit back and go, I'm really happy I've raised the conversation. No, he wants himself to be right. And ultimately, that's what's expected. That's what people want to argue with. They're not just thinking of Gary as someone that says, hey, I raised a topic that's interesting, right? And frankly, again, if you raise a topic that's interesting, sort of innately has the potential of being interesting, that doesn't make people ready or want to engage with it, right? It's unrecognizable to them as when it's raised as, hey, either or. It's like, no, they want to hear this, even if they have the other side. They want to hear this so they can go, no, that. They don't want to hear, hey, this or that. That or this. They have no framework from which to engage. And this is something we have to get past, right? We have to learn to engage with people presenting either or. It's people that say, hey, I've invented a really interesting question. Well, what's the answer? Well, that's something interesting to try to find. Let's find that together and have a collaborative answer. We're not ready for that. It feels like a violation of self to people or something. I feel like I am ready for that, but then again, in those kind of engagements, I tend to have a large influence, and so maybe that's self-centered. But anyway, bye.